Welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint, where scaling your business gets smarter, not harder. Hosted by Scott Smith, an outsourcing expert with over 20 years of global experience. From India to Alaska to South Africa, Scott's passion for people drives his mission to help you build powerhouse teams created for success. Grab your coffee, your boldest dreams, and your blueprint. It's time to build the business you've always wanted. Let's go.
Everybody, welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith, and I have got one of my very favorite people in my recent world, because Beth, you and I have only, recently met through LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
Beth Anne Campbell.
Either or. Just don't call me Liz.
Yeah, I was going to say Beth Anne Campbell if you're nasty, but see, I didn't want to do it. Go all Janet Jackson, so.
If you're nasty,
right.
Which I am, so either or.
You know what? Sister from another mister. Anyway, you and I started talking and I was like, we just need to record this. So
yeah.
So this, for everybody that's going to listen, we're going to talk about several things, and we are absolutely going to talk about outsourcing. But every time I've talked to you, Beth, I just love the conversation. And I think people need a window into our worlds. And what a better way.
Yes.
Right. So we were just talking about our favorite books. You just talked about U Squared by Price Pritchett.
Yes. Awesome. Highly recommended and super easy read and very inspirational.
And now Price Pritchett got to sponsor the podcast. Thank you. A couple of them, apparently. And I was talking about some of my favorite books, and then I was like, oh, I need to make sure that I record this. So I go to a handful of books time and time again in my life, and I started to talk about some great books here that I have holding up my phone on a tripod.
We all do,
Habits
Scott.
By James Clear, right?
Great book.
Great book, and not just great for holding up your phone.
No, it is excellent for that, but also content-wise, it is
absolutely
lovely.
I firmly believe it's the content that holds the phone up so high, so
literally and figuratively.
In absolutely both ways.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of books here on fasting, life in the fasting lane. And speaking of different Hendrixes, The Oldest Cure in the World by Steve Hendrix.
I thought you were going to say Jimmy.
Oh, you know what? Could have used The Oldest Cure in the World, I'm guessing.
This could be a whole show on Hendrix.
It could be a whole Hendrix show.
The whole theme.
But no, so my favorite book series in the world is actually The Chronicles of Narnia.
Excellent. Yeah.
Something I didn't read until I was almost 40. And really, just everything in it just kind of hit me right in the soul, and for Christmas.
Me too, Scott. Me too. I read when I was a kid, the only one I really remember reading was The Magician's Nephew, and I read it out of order, but I remember just the images they rent free in my head. Were just mind boggling that it probably shaped my love for writing, because it was just so magical and so easy to read, right? It wasn't a hard read.
Right. It's not a hard read at all.
Mm-mm.
But just the magic that's in it and the messaging, just absolutely brilliant. My second favorite book series in the world, and this is the one that I actually go to the most often, is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever ventured into the world of Robert Jordan and The Wheel of Time. A lot of people have not, and that's okay for today. I'll pass.
I have tried, Scott. I will tell you, I tried, and my husband tells me I have to just keep going. Some books, George R. R. Martin was the same way. When it took me 3 tries to get into Game of Thrones, and then I loved it, the whole series. But Wheel of Time was kind of like that. Like, I started reading it and I never really got, past maybe a quarter of the first book. And so I hope you're going to tell me, Beth, revisit it and get through it, and you'll love it.
I will, because the whole story is all about, the battle between good and evil. And, ultimately, who wins that battle and how it's won is really the essence of the story. But the problem with the Wheel of Time is that I think there are 15 books and they're
Oh,
all, you know,
it's a challenge.
it is, yeah. But I think I'm on my fifth or sixth time through at this point. And here's
Wow.
the thing. I have the whole series on my shelf, but I also have them on Audible. And I I walk every day, and I will, when I need some downtime where I'm not thinking about my business, I'm not thinking about a client, I'm not thinking about something going on in the family. I just put that in, and it's like my comfort series because I know all the characters. I know how the story goes. There are very few surprises at this stage,
Yeah,
and still it
but you
pulls
still
me in
love it.
every time. I love it.
I
Yeah.
love that because I do audiobooks. I do, and it's just something in me that says you should, if you're going to listen to audiobooks while you're driving or walking, they should be something knowledgeable. But the truth is, I you just got started me thinking like why don't I listen to some of my most loved? First of all, impressive that you've read this series 15 times. I thought I was kind of setting the bar when I said I'd read the unabridged The Stand by Stephen King like, 5 or 10 times. But I think you've surpassed that. But yeah, why not? Why does it always have to be? It's actually probably good for us to get away from constantly, I've got to learn, I've got to self-help and I mean it's good stuff, but sometimes you just need to escape.
You know what? Sometimes you need to escape. And so I have a lot of like self-help stuff, right? And some of it
Hmm.
I have an audiobook and some of it I have on one of my shelves. I use a lot of library apps because I love my local library, and sometimes I'll go to the library, and I have thinned out my personal book collection over the years. But I utilize the library and the library apps all the time for downloading audiobooks or Kindle books or whatever, just because I always love having access to something that really is valuable. And I try to utilize my time. So if I'm driving somewhere, I will try to use it on a podcast or on, a book where I can get something from it,
Yeah.
something meaningful, but sometimes, like when I go for my walk, I need to have some downtime. I need to have a little bit of time where I am focused on, Randall Thor and, all of the different characters in those books. And I love it. So,
I'm so impressed. I'm more of a book hoarder. I do Kindle, I do audio, but I grew up with a probably a 20-foot wall in my living room that my both of my parents, my mom and my stepdad were very avid readers. So that was my library.
uh
Including some of the stuff that probably was not appropriate for maybe an 8-year-old, but you know what? It was in the library. You learn early. So when I moved into this house, the first thing that I did, and this was just 4 years ago, is I said, I am finally going to have my wall of books. So I tend to buy physical books sometimes and audio or Kindle versions
yeah.
because I just like to have in now it's getting pretty filled up. So it's very lovely.
I
But
love that. And you know what? You and I are similar in that respect as well. And so only a big giant life change caused me to thin out my collection. And several of them went, either were donated or went to some of my kids or, whatever. But um, yeah, I went through a big transition and well, honestly, when I lost a spouse, I went through a very, very big change. And, um, the new iteration of the family unit as we started to blend and grow it out. I made several mistakes. I did a lot of things very differently. I did some things really well. And one of the things that were both done well and I made some mistakes was in thinning out my book collection. But you know what? I don't have any regrets about any of that.
yeah. You know what? Gratitude that you had enough books that you felt that it was time and you were in the right mindset because I imagine I'll get there soon because we're starting to fill up and once I announced that I had a wall of books or a bookshelf that I needed to fill, I got a lot of donations from and I still do. If my brother comes to visit, he brings a book. My brother-in-law's given us books. I mean, so I imagine I'll get there someday too, but right now I'm just enjoying. And I even went out and bought, I don't know if you remember, if you ever read the Childcraft books. They do series, it's a series of, kind of kids book, but, teaching you about all different categories of things.
Okay.
And they update them. My mother had the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and which always scared me. And I've never read it, but I got a lot of the books that I remember being on my shelf
Right.
because now the one thing I can't get is my mom had the big boom speakers in each corner, and then she had the stereo set that folded out in the middle from like the 70s. But you know what? Dreams,
You gotta
goals,
love that.
hashtag goals.
Right?
Right.
Absolutely. Big time.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and one of the things that my parents had on their shelves that I don't have are all those John Jakes books that I learned nothing from, just by the way. Um,
I'm not familiar. Who?
oh well, that's good. So I don't need to
Good.
corrupt your mind any further. But no, interesting writing, interesting stuff, but a little bit adult themed from time to time. So
Yeah, we had those too. Yeah. Some
yeah,
that were like,
learned a lot.
but mm,
Hey, you know what? So I want to talk about you. One of the things, so I invited you to come and be on the show with me. One, because I love the things that I see you doing. I've loved
oh,
making the connection with you. I love jumping on to your the Thirsty Professional podcast that you do. You do those lives every week.
every week on Fridays. And guess what? You're going to be one of my guests coming up in March, I
That's right.
believe,
That's
right?
right.
March or April. I'll have to check. But yeah, so yeah. Thirsty Professional, a live podcast series, just getting a little bit raw about careers, purpose, and fulfillment. So
Yeah, and I love that because that's
thanks.
stuff that we all need focus on, right? Everybody needs, and you do it out there. I know you do it on LinkedIn. Do you push it out to other platforms live as
Yeah,
well?
it's on LinkedIn and YouTube. Yeah.
LinkedIn and YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you know what? When I go live, I use Riverside, and that also pushes out to my LinkedIn and YouTube. I
Yeah.
think you do Restream, right?
I do restream, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I
How is
can
that?
get two for free.
Oh,
I like it a lot. Yeah, I liked the interface with StreamYard a lot when I
mhm.
was dabbling, but StreamYard for free only lets you stream one place and Restream lets you do two. And I really wanted everything that I do goes to YouTube, so just for longevity. So I like it a lot so far. Yeah, it's good.
Absolutely. So, well, I have several things related to that, and maybe not that as much actually, now that I say that, but maybe where we started. So I have this lovely book in my hands that was gifted
Ooh,
to me by a very dear friend. Oh, it was you.
it was me. Yes.
You gifted me
Look,
this
we're
lovely
twins.
book
We're twins in so many ways.
so
Look,
many ways, right? I
that's
need to get
right.
you in a Cotta Polo. That way you can fit right in.
There you go.
Um, you wrote this a couple of years ago, right?
Hmm.
Where the hell is my bacon?
Yeah.
How an innocent pork product conquered employee engagement and change management at a large Midwestern corporation.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, sir.
For those
That
of
is the
you
subtitle.
who haven't, it is, right? For those of you who haven't read Where the Hell is My Bacon, um, it's a fascinating read on so many levels. I found
Well,
it engaging. No, I really enjoyed it. It was distracting and fun and humorous and at times hilarious, at times way too real.
yeah.
Talk a little bit about where this came from. And I have a couple of concepts in here that I want to hit on, but because this centers right around the outsourcing blueprint, the things
Yeah.
that I talk about, and the very work that I do every single day of my life, Beth.
What a coincidence,
I know, right?
right? Yeah. So where the hell is my bacon came about. I have 23 years in the past. I recently got out of corporate, got out of the shackles, but I had 23 years in corporate and consulting. 17 of those for a large utility company somewhere in the northeast quadrant of the United States, let us just say.
A utility company
And
not to be named.
what's that?
A utility company not to be named, at least
Not to be named, right? Exactly. Somewhere in the United States. And we were, as you alluded to, we were going through a very difficult outsourcing. And I will just caveat this right up front. It was not the outsourcing itself or the outsourcing team that was problematic. It was most definitely the internal leadership. I'm sure that's as no surprise to many people,
No.
and the change management, right? So imagine you're a first level manager for a team in a department of 500 or so people, and you're going along, you're very busy with projects, you're loving your job, and then all of a sudden, boom, new CIO, boom, bunch of new people come in that you have no experience in utility. Boom, reorganization that nobody understands, and people are just reeling. And then, boom, oh, we're going to outsource your operational support.
Right.
And the surface message was, we need you to be freed up for projects, which is absolutely true. There was no lie there, right? We had a lot of stuff going on. We had there were rate case approvals, so we had a lot of capital money coming in. But um, you can imagine the horror of people who had been so utility companies still less so as every year goes by, but still are one of those rare places where you can go and you can work for 30, 40 years. So we've got a lot of people that have been there for a long time. These new strange people come in, didn't take the time to earn trust, reorged majorly that didn't really make any, actually didn't make any sense and got reorged. And then dropped this bomb of, hey, we're gonna take away your operational support for these systems that you basically built from, they're like your children. So you can imagine that it was, for me, in 23 years, was the most stressful time that I had experienced with the people, right?
Okay.
As a leader. And I was a part of this transition effort. I was a lead in our work management area, so I was responsible for scheduling and transitioning. Plus, I had my own expertise transitioning. I had people in my office crying. I had people left. There was probably some of that was anticipated and planned. In this whole cesspool of stress, some brilliant, and I say that in air quotes, some brilliant vice president, well-meaning vice president, decided, you know what, we're going to do one of our bi-yearly health mandates that if anybody who's worked in a big corporation where maybe you have a cafeteria, we're going to charge people more for the crappy food and less for the quote unquote nutritious food. And one of the things that they did was take away bacon bits from the salad bar. Just in some weird coincidence, the CIO that had come in and done this reorg and started this outsourcing that no one trusted had also done some good things. She had opened up social media. So we had an internal social media. And one day, one innocent gentleman was lamenting on his social media about the removal of this.
Here, allow me to offer you this chocolate.
So this well-meaning gentleman had one of my coworkers had been lamenting the removal of bacon bits, and I thought, this is what I need. I was so stressed out. I hadn't even had a lunch to even speak of, and just happened to be sitting down as he literally within seconds had posted. It was so very serendipitous. I posted this, oh my God, they removed bacon from the salad bar. It's such a sad day for bacon. And he ended up removing it immediately because he got scared. So I ran over to his desk and said, dude, what do you put it back. We need this. And that one little post on our new social media exploded, and it really became a microcosm of how people felt about the outsourcing and their fear and their worry about, am I going to have a job? I mean, so many more mistakes that management did, but ultimately it became kind of a company-wide thing. I was the orchestrator of this playing up this. I was very much involved in the social media. We ended up having this big buffet, bacon themed buffet, as kind of a screw you to management. But there were a lot of great lessons in there about how to handle a big change like that, and really the mistakes that leadership made. Yes. And what is that? I can't, is that a
Bring back the
recipe?
bacon buffet.
The bring back the bacon buffet, right?
Sure.
So yeah, we had this big buffet. There are recipes in the book, by the way, if anybody that based on or directly from the buffet that we had. But ultimately they put the bacon back, and we muddled through the outsourcing effort, which I won't call it a colossal failure, but it was years and years and then they ended up sort of reversing it. But but it was really a great lesson for me. I recognized when it was happening. And by the way, I had a lot of, this was when I was still sort of confident in loving corporate. I had a lot of confidence about my own position. I really never had the fear I'm going to go somewhere, right? They're going to just fire me. I didn't think they would fire anybody, and really they didn't. But a lot of people did. A lot of people that maybe weren't as secure in their careers, or had been there a long time, and they didn't know what they were going to do because this is what I've always done, and now someone else is doing it. And none of that was really addressed well. But I kind of recognized it as the time at the time as this is something that's really unique. In fact, I had a guy, as I put it in the book, I had a guy from the local paper got wind of it and called me and said, "Hey, we'd really like to write about this." And unfortunately, I couldn't do that. I probably would have gotten in trouble then. But yeah, it was different times. But like I said, it was very much the anger that was coming out from people about bacon was really underlying, for a lot of them, was this underlying anger about, I can't speak out. I'm afraid to speak out about this outsourcing. No one's hearing me. I'm afraid of losing my job. I don't want to rock the boat, but I'm going to talk about bacon because, who's going to fire me about bacon, right?
Right.
So
Right. It's bacon.
it's bacon,
And who
right?
doesn't love freaking bacon? Right.
Vegetarians, baby.
I,
But I'll tell you, Scott, I have a group on Facebook based on this book. It's called Where the Hell's My Bacon? And I have one Jewish person who doesn't eat pork and one vegetarian that I know of who are members of this group. So this is the power of bacon beyond just as a tasty fried product.
bacon has power. And, as you and
It
I talked about
does.
last time we talked, my favorite bacon recipe was the last one in the book.
Just plain old bacon?
Just bacon.
Yeah. I wish I would have known about, I think I told you in our last conversation about Szechuan bacon.
Yes.
Which I unfortunately was not aware of and did not make an appearance at the buffet, but a friend of mine sent me a recipe for a Szechuan BLT, and I modified the recipe a little bit. So if you're ever have the hankering for bacon, but you need it just taken to the next level, I would put a little Chinese five spice on there, maybe a little Thai pepper, and so good.
Just delightful. That sounds amazing. So the book was a great read, and there were a lot of themes in the book that resonated with me. So a little bit about my story. I had 28 years in corporate world, which is so hard to believe since I'm only
Yeah,
35.
I know, right?
Um,
Child
and
labor.
I know, right? 28 years in corporate, and I got involved in outsourcing. Um, oh gosh, probably 8 years in, you know, and it was interesting for me to have that experience of getting involved. And I got involved from the US side. We were sending work to Indian partners, and trying to get them ramped up to take more work. And the long and short of that is, but my role was to oversee the people that were checking the work that was being done by the offshore team. And, that's what we did. It's what I did for the first couple of years that I was involved, initially getting it to them and then checking it. And then that turned into an opportunity for me to move to India and to live and work there for 3 years, overseeing our operations. And I mean, I'll be honest, and I talk about this openly, because I was there, and because we ran our operations the way we did, we were able to take, less than 30% of our work volume and ramp it up to more than 70% of our work volume. And I cannot say that that did not have an end result of fewer people doing that composing work here in the US because it was being done elsewhere. But it was part of a larger shift, not just to outsourcing, but we had gone from little teeny teams all over the world to hubs where work was being done in larger hubs. And the hub work ended up being moved to offshore locations to two different primary partners. And that's the work that I then went to manage. And that created great opportunities for me in my career, not the opportunities that I expected them to materialize into. That didn't happen, in part because my company was purchased by our largest competitor.
Ooh,
Yeah, that was a whole big fun thing, right? And I have a lot of
always.
relationships and great people that I that came out of that. But for those of us that are still from that original company, there's still a level of bitterness that is very real,
Oh yeah.
because we were very proud of who we were as a company. And it's so funny to me that it's still so personal, you know?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I actually left the company a few years after this happened, and I worked for a consulting firm for 5 years, and then opportunity, and this was after I published a book about them. They still brought me back, and I was there for another year, but then they just did another reorg, and it just got ugly. So I went back to the consulting firm. But even after 5 years, and I came back, and things had changed a little bit. The model had changed. The model's always evolving. There was still a lot of resentment. Again, not around the people and not even really around the fact that because it was an absolute truth, we needed help, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't what was done, it was how it was done. And it was that, and for that, and I hope the book makes that clear that I came down pretty hard on our leadership. It was not, there were cultural differences that we had to get used to, and there were, of course, new people, and they had different methodologies, and so that was all stuff we had to go through. But it was really the lack of trust that we had in leadership, and the how. And I still, again, like you, I retain right trust.
Yes.
I still retain great relationships with some of the offshore folks, who some of them are now in the US.
Yeah.
But there was still a lot of bitterness even after, and by this time it had been 7 years since the original, when I went back. And so yeah, it stings.
You hit some important points there that I really want to take a minute and highlight. And then I want to get to that trust section, because to me, that was the best. With everything else that was so great, Beth, that's the best part of the book for me, right?
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you talk a lot about how it was done. It wasn't so much one that it was done, although it kind of starts with, well, what do you mean? You
Yeah,
know, to all of the different changes. I mean, reorgs are not new, right? And they were happening long before we were sending work anywhere else in the world.
right.
And people have always handled that poorly. Have you seen The Secret of My Success back from the 80s, Michael J. Fox?
Many years ago,
Yeah,
many years
right.
ago. Yeah.
I just rewatched it just because I was up late working one night, so I just put it on and let it play in the background. And there's a scene in there, when the Michael J. Fox character is being walked around the building and shown, the suits, right? We don't consort with the suits, right?
Oh yeah.
And Melrose, who's like his mailroom buddy, says something that I think is really funny. And he said, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm going to get it wrong. Uh, Something happens to a man when he puts a necktie on. It like cuts off the circulation to his brain, you know? And that is true. I don't know what it is about. I mean, it's a truism, but there's truth to the idea that when a person gets into a certain level of leadership, their perspective often shifts away from maybe where they started or maybe where they never started, right? From the people,
Right.
those frontline people that are doing the work. And it's those frontline people, and you mentioned this in the book, that if you listen to them, they will give you the perspective. They'll tell you what needs to be done. They'll point out what the problems are. They'll tell you how to fix everything.
Yeah.
But people don't listen, right? And so they
Right.
think, oh, well, here's what we're going to do. And so you get this new CIO, right, that comes in and says, hey, we're going to be healthier. Also, we're going to shift all this volume of work to this outsourced team, and now go make that happen,
Yeah.
and it's a mess because it's done so poorly. And I firmly believe, and Beth, one of the reasons that I started Akata Consulting is that because of the experience that I gained with working with offshore teams, I know how to make sure that it goes well. I know all the mistakes that we made. I know the hunt and peck process that people do when they try to find a provider. I know the pain that goes into, thinking that because, well, I know how to do this, therefore, here, do this. It just doesn't work that way. Everything has got to be crisp and crystal clear and clean and well defined and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and corrected and reinforced. And until they get it, and it takes time. And you refer to
Yes.
this in the book too. It's not just going to be a matter of here, it's a holiday break. We're going to take over this process while we're out. And we're going to come back, and all of a sudden, you're going to be doing all these things that we've been doing for years, these processes and systems that are our children, right?
Yeah.
And that's how people approach it. And it fails almost every single time, and always for the very same reasons. It's done wrong.
100%. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened in this case. And I will say, I don't know, and I've made this very clear in the book too. I was not privy to the conversations that happened up to the point where this decision was made. And I'm sure I have absolute respect for what C-level executives and upper managers have
Sure.
to go through, right? And sometimes hard decisions have to be made. That doesn't mean that they have to be made in a way that causes such stress and fear for people.
No, or nor in a vacuum.
Nor in a vacuum, right? And they
Yes.
this is the little bit of the lie that happened here, is that there was a superficial attempt to communicate, but the wrong people were communicating. They put people in charge of communication, like the new CIO, who probably thought that she was doing, well, you guys want in fact, she would even say it sometimes, well, you guys wanted, information. It was the wrong information. It was from the wrong person because nobody trusted her.
Right.
So, and I remembered saying to my boss, and even my boss's boss, who I had a pretty good relationship with, we don't, she shouldn't be delivering this message. Get Peg to do it. She was my boss's boss, and she was very charismatic, and she'd been there and people trusted her.
Right.
Or get my boss to do it. Or pull in the first level supervisors and have them invested, and so they can help deliver the message and understand. But no, it was sort of really down and dirty. And I don't know. Again, I'm not privy to these conversations, so I don't know if the purpose of the outsourcing in part was to reduce headcount. There was probably an assumption that that would happen because we did lose a lot of people just because they got scared or pissed off in some cases. So I don't know if that was the ultimate goal, but I had no choice but to believe that that was true based on how it went down, because it was just so badly managed, rushed, and horribly communicated. Even though they would say, "Well, we're inviting people in to talk to us." Well, you don't talk to somebody that you don't trust, that you just met, who just completely reorged and upended your world in a way that didn't make sense. Plus, drop this bomb. So,
Right. And when you bring the person in that you do trust, and I've seen this happen. You bring somebody in that you do trust and they give the message. And it's probably better received than the new person that nobody trusts, but still nobody trusts the message or the person that's giving the message,
Correct.
even
Correct.
though they're the trusted person, because you're talking about moving work from here to somewhere else, and that's going to affect me. That's going to
Right.
affect me. And whatever you say, sure, you may not be threatening my job today, right? But
Right.
but it's going to affect me. Oh, it's going to free you up to for more projects, right? So in my
Right.
last employer, I was managing a team and it was an outsourcing opportunity for our service team because they were sending work to us to do. Now they were outsourcing it, I guess insourcing, I don't know. But they were sending it to us, somebody who was not them, right? So to
Yep.
me, that's how I define outsourcing. Somebody else is doing the job, you're paying them to do it. The work, you're doing this work, you were doing it, now we're moving it over to this team to do.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with dinner, right? I used this example earlier today. You're going to outsource your dinner. Now you can make it yourself. You're going to just, do it yourself because that's what you do. Or you're going to go out to dinner, whether it's fast food or it's a nice place or it's all bacon. You're going to pay somebody else to make it, prep it, serve it to you. That's outsourcing your dinner, right? So it's the same
Yeah.
concept. And we do it, we all do it every single day. We don't think of it that way because those kind of things are not usually what threatens our job. And when they do threaten our, I've got to stay home and cook dinner job, we generally welcome that because, nobody really
Right. Right.
wants to spend their time doing that. I mean, some people do. For those of you that do, I apologize. I blame Beth.
Don't come
Um,
at us. Don't come at us.
but it all of the communication, even from a trusted source, because it's this change is happening, is going to be poorly received because people don't deal well with change. So there have to
Oh
be
my God. Yeah.
change management processes and systems that are put in place to make sure that those changes are communicated well and that people are prepared for them. There has to be very crystal clear communication about what's happening, why it's happening. There has to be input taken from the frontline employees who are
Yeah.
doing the work to make sure that everything that is being done is going to be done in the right way. It doesn't mean that you have to continue to do it the way that they have always done it. It doesn't mean that.
Right.
But initially, it does mean that. And so you need to get their input because they're the ones that know it best, far better than the person sitting up in the C-suite whose goal is, generally speaking, to, create more profit for shareholders. And that's just how things function, right? And we're all
Yeah.
in business. We understand that for me, the nature of my business is to make more money. If I don't make any money, I don't have a business. Well, that's true whether I'm a solopreneur or I am a, multinational conglomerate. It doesn't matter. You know, the focus of every business is to make money. If we're not generating revenue, we're not going to survive. So a lot of companies turn to outsourcing as a saving initiative, which is fine.
Yeah.
But again, they do it wrong. They handle it
Yeah.
wrong from beginning, not always to end, but sometimes to end. And then what happens? They have to shift it because they've done it so poorly that it hasn't given them the outcome that they expected or they anticipated, and they don't properly invest in it. And
Yeah.
then everybody is negatively affected. You get people that are pissed off at you. You get people that lose their job because, oh, your job is moving to this outsourced vendor, right? Or
Right.
and then you got people that, I'm a little passionate about this, sorry. But
No.
it doesn't have to be that way. It just
Mm.
doesn't. It can all be done in a way that everybody wins. I have seen companies that have taken work from here and moved it to a company in India. And with that move, they saved the cost of that work being done here and they reallocated that lower cost to the offshore team. And they didn't can everybody here. You know what they did? They doubled down on their core objectives and the core work that they do. And they used that to build that out and grow their business even more. And were able to not only pay people more, but bring more people in here in the US because they had more resources, because they were suddenly making more money, because they could focus on the things that they really were good at in their business.
Yeah.
Most companies don't do that when they have to.
Yeah. I think it probably looked really good on paper, and I don't think anybody, I don't remember anybody ever not understanding that this was about cutting costs,
Right,
right?
right,
Because we're smart people. Um, Now that's an easy thing to say when you're not fearful that you're going to lose your job. So I'm sure that there were people that didn't give a hoot.
right.
But I think, one of the big things you touched upon, asking the people what's wrong and they'll fix it, which I talked about a lot in the
Yeah.
book. I think that was one of the things, in addition to all of this other stuff that's going on that was badly communicated, bad change management, lack of trust, is that we there were people that did speak out. I was one of them, even though I was a lead in a big portion of our transition. I spoke out and I said, look, this is not going to work. We need more time. You can't transition this gigantic system that was built and invested in over years in 2 months. And that's what, and by the way, that didn't happen. We extended and we were right. But people felt like they weren't heard, right? I know, odd, right? There was also, and I'm sure that you probably are very well aware of this, but there was also, this is a Midwestern, although happily, not perfectly, but happily diverse big company with, at the time, 7 or 8 thousand people in a fairly diverse state. But there's a cultural aspect of this too. So, and if I'm being honest, probably not everybody who was going through this transition on the in the company side was probably very accommodating to people who are different. Let's just say that. I recognize that and I saw that.
Sure.
So there was a cult on top of all this stuff. I'm not being heard. There's this cultural difference of that I don't understand. And they did address that eventually, but people coming from a completely different country, and we had a spattering of people from India at the time, but the people are just there. You have different mannerisms, you have different ways of doing things. A lot of them were younger, so you had a lot of there's generational impacts here. None of that stuff got addressed, and that's all what I think a good change management plan could have done. We eventually did talk about, we had some presentations from some of our leads from the offshore team, talking about some of these things, cultural differences. And this is, we maybe do things a little bit differently, and doesn't mean, like you said, it's not that it's wrong. And that was a great aha moment for people. Unfortunately, it happened too far into the process, but it was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for explaining that.
Right.
But, until then, it's very, anybody new coming in. But then now you factor in all these other things, cultural differences, and they don't look like us, and they don't act like us, and they're younger than us or whatever. All of those factor into this cesspool of just bad change management, which, good for me because it makes for a great, a great book. But yeah, thank you. But yeah, it was tough times.
You know what? So you just said you dropped a lot of gold nuggets there.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, no, honestly. So the truth is that at some point the Band-Aid has to get ripped off.
Yeah,
That's always going to hurt, and there's no way for it not to.
right.
There just is no way. But you can do things to try to mitigate the pain of that Band-Aid being ripped off. And, you do that by being sensitive. One of the things, for example, one of the things that I offer at Nakata Consulting, when I work with a client that is going to be working with an offshore team, we do some cultural sensitivity training. And I know the reason I do that is because I've seen firsthand what it looks like when people go in without it. I've seen, and here's the problem with people do people things, right? So people are going to react like people. They're going to be insensitive. They're going to say something. They're going to,
And it happened. Yeah.
absolutely, they're going to fear things that they don't really need to fear, and they're not going to fear the things that they probably should, you know? Um, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. I do want to talk about a couple of the points here
Sure.
in the trust section, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, so you say before you can even fathom addressing any major change, you must have trust. That takes time. Seek first to understand, someone wise once said, and you give your husband credit for that, which is
Yes.
great, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I appreciate him stealing that. No, I'm just teasing. But no, it's important. You have to understand before you can be understood, right?
Yeah.
That's a basic principle. Hiring of the outsider. Do listen to your people. Do acknowledge and understand your employees' feelings and state of mind. You can validate their feelings. You can understand them. It doesn't mean you have to change the overall strategy based on those feelings,
Right.
but you better frickin' listen.
Yeah, and there were instances, public instances, where some of the higher ups, including some of the executive team, would make comments, not necessarily fully publicly, but in front of the wrong people, myself included. Um, well, I'm giving them what they wanted to hear. There was almost an annoyance, like, it was clear to me that they really didn't take the time to understand what was going on. And I really think, honestly, if I were to do something different, I would have brought in the people at my level. I was a first level supervisor, but also a thought leader at the time. Didn't know the word, but I was very vocal. I was a speaker outer. I would have brought in the Beth Campbells and the people like her and sat them down and said, "Look, this is a hard decision. We need to do this. Let's get you up to speed on what's going on. Let's get you on board." And then why don't you help us with this message? But as it were, I didn't know anything more than anyone else. So people
Right.
were coming to me, my team was coming to me and going, "What's happening? Am I going to lose my job?" And I'm like, I'm trying to be supportive, but it's difficult to be supportive when you are excluded from those being part of the success.
But okay, be honest though. People come to
Yeah.
you and you're saying, no, no, been trying for about 3 years.
Yeah, never, never. But I will say, and I did talk about this in the book, they did go through a point where mandatory, everybody had to go to these meetings, and they were called Own Your Own Career. And part of that was updating your resume. And so people were like, why do I need to update my resume? Now, there is good reason in like a consulting firm to have a resume, but in a utility company, you never use it. So yeah, again, just another one of those things where if you had
Okay.
asked Beth Campbell, I might have said, yeah, let's not do the resume thing. If we want to talk about transition and change and how to have more confidence because I'm going to go into something completely new after 30 years, great. But let's not have a mandatory class where we talk to people about things that they would need to do if they were job searching. That is just bad decision making right
Bad
there.
decision making, terrible timing, even if it's well intended,
Yeah.
it is unhelpful, you know?
Yeah. And it certainly does not increase the trust
No.
that we are looking for, right? We're trying to build that. The ironic thing about trust is, and this is just part of what people have to do when they're good leaders is we cannot expect those who we are serving are the people that are working for us, quote down the food chain. We cannot expect them to trust us right away. It takes a lot of time to build that trust. The ironic thing is we actually do need to present a level of trust of them, especially if I'm coming in new. They know what they're doing. They've built these systems. We trust these people with millions and sometimes billions of dollars of systems and processes. We ask them to call in from the airport when we have a problem, and yet we come in and we just we don't have trust. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy that as a good leader, you have to understand that you are not going to be trusted,
Right.
but you have to extend a certain amount of trust. And clearly that didn't happen here either.
You know what? And it really rarely does. And
Mm-mm.
people get in their own way, and especially in the leadership roles, they get in their own way.
Yeah.
And I don't fault people for that really because that leadership role is hard and it's often so big
Yeah.
picture, but you have to stick to the basics. You can't let yourself get away from the basics. Yes, your job as a leader is hard, but you have to be honest. You have to communicate clearly. You have to admit, this is another point you make, you don't know everything. Listen
Right.
to your employees, and take the time. Don't do it all at once. Take the time to make sure that everything happens the best way that it can. And if you do those things, and if you're sensitive, and if you're self-aware, you're going to be able to eliminate so many of the problems that go along with outsourcing. But at the end of the day, one of the end results is going to be that people are going to change career paths. They may lose
Yeah.
their job outright. It's possible. Um, or they may choose on their own to go a different direction. They may become disillusioned by the poor management and leadership. And not of everybody. It only takes one. It only takes
Yeah.
one bad leader
Yeah.
coming in and going, you know what? I'm going to take over, and this is what we're. And you could have somebody that you have worked for 20 years that you love, that loves you, and you're like, what are you doing? Right? It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Oh, that happened to me.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a peer that I worked with for 5+ years, worked well with, and then my boss left a company, and this peer was put into that position, completely not ready. Nice guy, nothing wrong with him, just was not prepared and did not have the same level of confidence in it. And it completely, it was a completely different relationship. And that was the point where I said, yep, I'm on my way out. But for 5 years, it was a great. I worked with him in a lot of different projects, and we got
Mhm.
always got along and had a great collaboration relationship. But yeah, and by the way, this is not that what you just described. That is not an outsourcing issue. That is a leadership issue because that can happen if you have a crappy project or if you just,
Yep.
something changes or a reorg or whatever. It has nothing inherently to do with outsourcing.
Yes, but
People
this
will
is
leave.
this is the outsourcing blueprint, not the crappy project blueprint,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
although, so no, you're absolutely right. It's a leadership issue, and it happens across the board, and
Yeah.
it affects everybody. It affects all of us. One of the reasons that so many of us from that original company are still bitter, was not because we ended up rolling in under our biggest competitor, although I can't say that's zero, right? The problem was that we felt that we got sold out,
Yeah.
by the person that was entrusted to lead the company. We
Yeah.
felt that they sold us out, and that's one of the reasons that so many of us are still bitter today. Things happen in business. That's fine. But when you see decisions that seem to be for the personal benefit of the person that's at the top and not for everybody else that's selling their heart and soul and taking their wife that has a heart condition and their 7 children to a foreign land
Right.
to build and grow that business for that organization, people can become embittered. Weird. you know
Well, and it's
you have
just
to
in
treat
it,
people as people.
we don't know, those are the stories that we put in our heads, and sometimes they're true or have some truth, and sometimes they're not. But I think that's why I harp so much about the communication and why I'm such an advocate of transparency, like brutal, as much as you legally and ethically can, people would rather know the truth because transparency builds trust. Even when you're giving bad news,
Yep.
if people believe, and I believe that this is a lot of why I had success as a manager, was because I didn't hold things back. The crazy things that upper managers would not want to, that I was told over the years, don't say this, or don't say this to the executive, or don't tell the people that this person left, because they're going to know that the person left, right? So it's just ridiculous stuff. But you have to, that transparency is so critical. And it does really help to build that trust. But it's all boils down to communication. It's so key in what you communicate and how you communicate. And if you don't do it right, that's your it's gonna you're gonna have a revolt, and people are gonna do a bacon buffet, and broadcast, and the news is gonna call you and say, look, we want to do a news story on your revolt, and then there you have it.
Yeah. No, you know what? So, all right. So, great book, great information,
Thank
wonderful
you. Appreciate it.
story. I'm sorry for all of that pain. I'm glad that it turned into a creative project for you. And nice turn, by the way, to take something that was challenging and turn it into something productive and that people will benefit. The book is Where the Hell is My Bacon by my dear friend Beth Anne Campbell. And
Thank you. I appreciate your letting me, this is really the first opportunity, and I don't even know if I have, other than myself, this is that I've had to really talk in this deep of a fashion about some of the concepts in the book. So thank you. I do appreciate it.
Well, so I'm grateful for you sending it to me for a few reasons. Not because then I got to read it, because it gives me an insight into you, which I really love. And you know that you and I hit it off, I think, the very first time we talked,
Yeah.
hit it off because we have so much in common and we're just like, separated at birth or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, my dad did travel a lot around them. Anyway, um, well, I have a story about that. It may have to come up before we were done.
Okay.
It's so funny. But the themes of communication and clarity and transparency are consistent across any business. And it's not just about outsourcing, right? Now so the podcast is about outsourcing and it's about, businesses and I give people an opportunity to talk about their business and I give them the chance to talk about things that they really want to talk about because I want to give them an opportunity to be able to do that on this small today platform that really is the largest stage in the world. I tell people this all the time. Anytime you're on a podcast, whether it's your own or somebody else's, it is the biggest stage in the world because it
Yeah.
can literally be listened to by anybody, right?
Yeah.
I push this thing out to every platform that's available, and anybody that wants to listen to it anywhere in the world can listen to it. And so I encourage everybody in the world to listen to my podcast, but also to Beth's podcast, the Thirsty Professional, because it's filled with amazing information. And I'm not going to sidetrack just yet because I almost did. But the themes in the book are consistently the same, whether you're outsourcing or you're, in an established business. So we're seeing a lot of things happen on the governmental level today. People are losing their jobs. And how that plays out long term, we'll see. That's not up to me, right?
Right.
But a lot of people are being affected by those changes, and a lot of people have been affected by changes that are not solely driven by outsourcing. Outsourcing is a tool that is often used by larger entities because the work still has to get done. When you fire people out of the blue and expect that everybody else to pick up the load, that doesn't
Yeah.
work either, right?
You
And
can
how
only
many
give so much to the
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Well,
Yeah.
and surely that's happened to you where, they're like, you know what, in a reorg, this is what we're going to do. And
All the time, Scott.
you
All the
folks are
time.
gone. Everybody else, here you go. You know? Yeah. It's nonsensical, and it's one of those that's one of those Michael J. Fox or Melrose lines, right? And you put that
Yeah.
tight around the neck, cuts off the circulation of the brain. Um, so we get caught up in those kinds of changes, and we have to remain self-aware. You can never lose sight of the fact that communication is the key. That if you will just talk and listen, because more than half of communication is listening. If you will just listen and then share the information that you can, most of your employees, and if there's anybody out there that is in a leadership role in corporate America, if you don't get anything from this podcast except this, get this. Listen. Just listen and don't gatekeep information because most of your employees want to help you succeed. They want to help the organization succeed. It's why they're there. They're not just there. Now, there are a few, but most people are not just there because they want to collect a paycheck and go home. Most people actually care. And they
Yes.
show up like they care, and they give like they care. And you should care about them, listen to them, and don't gatekeep information. Give them a chance to solve your problems. And if the resolution to your problem is outsourcing, that's fine. It can be part of the solution. There's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't always have to be, or if you're going to do it, at least you can do it right because you've listened.
Yes. Amen. All great points. I have a saying, it's that sugarcoating doesn't cause what is it? Sugarcoating doesn't cause diabetes, but it does cause mistrust. And that's, with transparency, exactly what
Yeah.
you said, that people so appreciate it. And it does build trust when you tell people what you can, or you say, I don't know. I will try to find out for you, or I just don't know right now. I can't answer that. It's so much more appreciated than when you just try to, which was a lot of what I've seen, which is trying to sugarcoat it, filter it, make it seem like it's something that it's not. So,
You know what? I have a personal problem with that. It's a personal failing. And I'll give it an example. I was talking to my wife the other day. Uh, and you'd think after a collective 34 years of marriage, I wouldn't still make rookie mistakes. And yet here I am, right?
and yet,
She had had some frustration with something. And so I asked her, what do you need from me? What do you need me? No, I asked her, what do you need me to say to you? And that was not the right question. It was a well-intended question, but it was
mm,
not the right question. It wasn't what she needed me to say to her. What she needed me to say was what I really thought. She needed my actual, unfiltered, non-sugar-coated thoughts. That's what she needed. And so that's what I gave her. But I didn't realize that until the response was, you just want to tell me what you think I want to hear? No, ma'am. That's not at all what I meant. I apologize, ma'am. I apologize unreservedly. I was very wrong. And and that was not her fault. That was completely my fault because I came at it with I don't know that I need to wait. I was trying to be sensitive, right? I don't know
yeah,
that I need to wade in and solve her problems. I can't solve her problems, but I
no.
can listen and I can tell her what I think from a point of truth,
I
not
think you
hard.
just add a few little words that if you had taken off, because as a woman, I think it would have been a different story if you had just said, what do you need from me? And then she has the opportunity to say, I want you to tell me, but not what do you need to say to me sounds like you're just going to regurgitate what you think I want to hear, right? And that's an interpretation, right? That's an inference, maybe on her part, but I might
No,
react the
it
same way
was
to
the
my
right
husband.
interpretation. She was right. I
Yeah,
was trying to give her what I thought she needed me to hear from me, and that wasn't what she needed. What she needed was me to ask her, what do you need from me?
yeah,
How can I best support you in this particular situation? So whether you're in a marriage or you're at work, that question still applies. What do you need from me? What can I bring to support you? Because people need that. And especially when you're talking about, reorganizations and you're talking about, outsourcing and projects from hell, right? And,
mm-hmm.
job changes and things that are going to affect real people in real time in real lives, Um, so one of the points of this whole podcast, the Outsourcing Blueprint, is to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly that come from outsourcing. And your book talks a lot about that. I can't hold this up enough. I just probably should just put it right here. So come on, filter. There you
There
go.
you go. Yeah.
Um, is it's not just about that, but the outsourcing project is a theme that runs throughout the book, right? And it's really about communication and being heard, and at least what I got from it. And,
Yes. Perfect.
employees kind of coming together, with a common theme. In this case, it's
Yeah.
bacon, right?
Yeah, there's a triumph aspect about it, but yeah, the outsourcing is just kind of the thread
Yeah,
that sort of weaves it all together, but it's really, as I say in the book, it's really not about bacon, even though bacon's in the title, it's really about so much more. But
right.
bacon and outsourcing are just kind of the threads that, weave the tapestry, as you've um alluded to that great word
That's
before.
correct. Yeah, that's the
Um,
truth. It is. We all have our tapestries. So Beth, let's talk. We probably should wrap up because we've gone over my allotted time, and I'm
yeah.
sorry if I have kept you from anything.
Yeah.
Talk to everybody just for a minute about where you're headed, your focus. So
Yeah.
you're doing your podcast. Clearly, you write books. Your focus, your business, things that you want people to know about you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm no longer in corporate, and I've spent the last year and a half kind of figuring out what I want to do. Writing is my first love. So right now, one of my big focuses is writing, but I am not giving up on nonfiction. I still have a lot of ideas, but I'm focusing this year on, I've got 3 novels that I'm publishing, so finishing and publishing. So I'm kind of transitioning a little bit to fiction for a while. I also have my live series, which you're going to be a guest on, which I can't wait. And it's really just getting nitty-gritty, no BS real about careers, passion, fulfillment, and purpose. And so I'm loving that. That's really, is that my business? I don't know. I just love it. I love doing it. I love talking with people. But honestly, I will be truthful, Scott. Since we first talked and then you invited me here, I really got excited. This is the first podcast that I've been a guest on where I've talked about the corporate life aspect of which is a big part of my life. And I got very excited about it, more than I thought. I think I've just gotten to a better place about the hell that I lived in and worked in before. So I'm really thinking, I want to pursue some speaking. And so I've really been dabbling in how can I incorporate, no pun intended, but how can I incorporate that all of that great knowledge and thoughts that I have about corporate life and what it's really like, and it with the entrepreneurship, and turn that into something that could be, in the future, maybe some speaking opportunities. But you got me excited again about reliving and reevaluating from a different mindset that corporate world. So that's kind of where my mind is right now.
Well, as I tell my wife all the time, I have that effect on the ladies, right? But
Oh, she is an angel.
you know
She is
what?
a
She's an absolute freaking angel. I am blessed. I am so blessed. Robin Lee, if you're listening, you know how
I
much.
concur. Yes, I concur. I don't even know you, but I'm saying you are.
Oh yeah, no, to put up with me and my nonsense, she's just an absolute gift. She really is a gift. Anyway, don't
Yeah.
start me on that, Beth, because I will. There's a whole thing,
You're
but
gonna start crying, aren't you? Yeah.
it's possible. I am that guy. So, but do you self-publish or do you have a publisher that you work with? Or
I have self-published I have 2 books, both my books, as well as I helped my uncle write a book called The Broken Spoke. It's about his childhood abuse, addiction, and recovery, and triumph. And did some editing on that. So I've self-published. I think this year I'm gonna try to find a publisher. I'll self-publish first,
okay.
but I might do that because I don't mind it. I think I did a decent job at self-publishing, but I really like to focus on the creativity part and not do the harder work. And if it means I get a little bit less per book, then I guess I can deal with that because it's my dream. It's my makes my heart sing. So
Well, and you got to live for your dreams and make that heart sing.
100%.
So, and for your speaking goals,
Yeah.
do you have a plan around how you want to build that out yet, or are you
Well, I
still
do. I
formulating?
Yeah, I do a lot of course, I have a podcast. I've had podcasts, guests. So I do a lot of informal speaking.
Sure.
So right now I'm just trying to home in on what my message is, right? And I think this is where I was telling you earlier about my adventures in with AI, right? Taking all of these things that I love to do, writing and podcasting and corporate world and creativity and all these things, and trying to figure out how do I mesh that. So that's really what I'm trying to do, is trying to figure out what do I really want my message to be? Because I could talk about a lot of stuff. And I think the first part of that is probably getting into some virtual summits and then kind of going from there.
Okay. Well, so I am going to introduce you to people that I hope you don't already know. It's possible that you do. LinkedIn's weird, but
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to a couple of people if that's okay. One
Yeah.
is a speaker, executive coach and speaker coach who has a program that focuses on getting people ready to get their signature talk and message outlined. There's a whole program around it. I'm going to introduce you to her.
Thank
And
you.
absolutely. And then I have another friend that I met actually through mutual people that I met through the other person, who is in the publishing world, and she helps authors get their message out there. And in
Awesome.
fact, I just reposted something of hers. Her name is Christine Skiff. I don't know if you know Christine, but um, I reposted something that she put out the other day, uh, that she just was like blown away because she happened to be looking something up, and three of the books that that her company had published were available at Walmart.com, and she was like, "What?" She had no idea,
Yeah,
that
that's
they
like
were
gold.
there and available. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she was just so thrilled, that all of the work that she had put in. So I will introduce you to Christine if you don't know
Thank
her
you.
already. Absolutely.
Much appreciated.
You bet. And I will tell you, and all the other 37,000 of you that are listening to this right now, because I know you've stayed with us this whole time. Um, I only work with people, and I only refer people to work with people that I trust and that I am 100% sure are going to give you the best value for the work that you need them to do. And that's my whole business model is built around that. So I do that. I'm very in your face, overly personal. You may have noticed that about me.
No.
I'm not shy. I am an introvert, but I'm not shy, ironically. And part of my model is when I have a larger client that is going to work with an offshore team, uh, we go. We get on a plane, we go meet the offshore team, because the number one thing that you can do when you're investing in an offshore team is to actually freaking invest in them. So I help people make those connections, and we do that in person. I will not fly you to Texas and Florida where these other people live.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I know. But who knows, right?
I appreciate it. And I will just say that am very discerning about who I bring on my Thirsty Professional. I only want people that are transparent and candid and who have great energy and great personalities and a sense of humor. So, and that is why you will be guesting on my show.
Do I need to
And
wear a hat? I've been playing with the backwards hat. It's a little Danny Del Vecchio, but
you, I would love it. It's becoming a trend. So, for those of you listening, I normally for my podcast, I wear a it's not going to fit much over my big bun, but I wear a steampunk hat, and I've had I think all but one of my guests so far has sported a hat. So you are encouraged. Always welcome.
the
Any
thing is, I
hat.
look like a schmuck in a hat.
You do
Um,
not look like a schmuck in a hat. Not true. That is a story that you're making up, Scott. Scott. I'm a transparent, honest person. You do not look like a
so,
schmuck in a
so
hat.
Beth, I can put a ball cap on, and it's not terrible, right? I can never get it right on Zoom because it's always looks crooked.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
it's not
maybe you do. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
it's not terrible.
I'm
No, I
kidding.
do. I
No, you don't.
maybe I will
Actually, I
put
liked it backwards better though, if I'm being honest.
so
Actually made you look like even cooler than you already are.
I did this. I put that on backwards in a meeting yesterday just for fun, and the guy that was hosting it was like, "You like getting ready for a rap battle, or what are you doing?" And I was like, "Dude, you want a rap battle? I'll go right now. I will freestyle. It'll be terrible, but I will do it. You know,
Oh, he's the new Eminem.
honestly, right? I'm more of
Yeah.
the, well, S&S, Scott Smith.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
But anyway, Beth, okay, so I'm excited to come on your show. I will
Yeah.
be ready. I will do the things that you have sent over for me to be prepared for.
Awesome.
And thank you for the opportunity to do that. Thank you for being here as a premier guest, a landmark guest,
Oh,
so this is the longest conversation that I've ever recorded intentionally. And I say
and
that
it could be
because
longer. If we let it, it would go longer.
sure, we could just keep talking about who knows what, and we would enjoy it. Everybody else would, just tune out. But yeah, who cares? That's, whatever. So
Well, it is my pleasure, truly, and I'm honored, and I enjoy it anytime, Scott, but formally or informally. I just love talking to you. I think you are I think, what have I called you? My inner voice twin. I've called you my brother from another mother, something. I mean, we just have a lot of similarities in our histories and in our personalities, and love it.
it's true. So before we go, where can everybody find you and find information about you?
Yeah, Beth Anne Campbell, Anne with an E on LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways. You'll recognize me by the steampunk hat in my picture. And then bethannecampbell.com is my website. Again, put an E on the Anne, so it's all one word, Beth Anne Campbell. And
Awesome.
you can find all things there.
Well, thank you, Beth. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
Absolutely. Everybody, this has been another episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. We'll see you next time. Let's go.
Thanks for tuning in to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. If today's episode brought you value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to take their business to the next level. Follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube at Akata Consulting for more tips, insights, and updates. Or join our free school community, the Outsourcing Blueprint. Until next time, keep dreaming bold, building big, and outsourcing smarter. Let's go.